There's something peculiar about how birthdays evolve over the years. When you're young, they're all about celebration, presents wrapped in bright paper and candles you can't wait to blow out. But as the decades pass, birthdays become something quieter, more about reflection than fanfare, more about presents than presents. That's what I thought anyway, until my 70th birthday arrived and taught me otherwise. My daughter, Anna, showed up that evening with something that would reshape how I understood both her and myself. And no, I'm not talking about something you could hold in your hands or display on a shelf. This was deeper than that. This was about memory, about lost pieces of yourself, and about the quiet ways our children see us when we think no one's looking. But before I tell you what happened that night, let me ask you something. Where are you right now? Are you listening from a quiet room in the Midwest? From a bustling apartment in the city? From somewhere by the ocean where you can hear waves? Wherever you are, I'm glad you're here. This story is for anyone who's ever wondered if the parts of themselves they've set aside are truly gone forever. The day began the way most of my recent birthdays had, with a phone call from my sister, a card in the mail from my dentist's office, and a house that felt a little too spacious for just one person. Anna had called that morning to say she'd be coming over for dinner. There was something in her voice, a kind of nervous energy, like she was carrying a secret that was both exciting and frightening. The late afternoon sun streamed through my kitchen windows, casting long golden shadows across the tile floor. I put on my favorite gray cardigan, the one with the pearl buttons, not because I was expecting anything special, but because making small efforts for yourself matters, even when no one else will see. Around 6 o'clock, I heard Anna's car pull into the driveway. I met her at the door, and there she was, my daughter, somehow still the little girl who used to help me in the garden, but also this confident woman I sometimes had to remind myself I'd raised. She carried a canvas bag in one hand and a carefully wrapped package in the other. "Happy birthday, Mom," she said, pulling me into a hug that lasted just a beat longer than usual, long enough for me to know something significant was coming. She set the bag on my counter and began unpacking ingredients. Fresh herbs, a bottle of wine I recognized as expensive, and a white bakery box tied with string. It was unusual for her to cook for me. That had always been my role. But tonight she moved through my kitchen with quiet determination, and I found myself simply watching her, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she concentrated, the careful way she measured ingredients. We talked about ordinary things while she cooked. Her work project, the book she was reading, the neighbor's new puppy that barked at its own shadow. But underneath the casual conversation, I could feel something waiting to be said. Every so often, her eyes would drift to that wrapped package sitting on the counter, as if it was radiating something only she could feel. When dinner was ready, roasted vegetables and a beautiful salmon with lemon, she poured us both wine, and we sat at my small dining table with candles burning between us. We laughed about things I hadn't thought about in years, shared memories that felt sweeter for the time that had passed. After we finished eating and cleared the dishes, she picked up the package. But she didn't hand it to me right away. She held it, her fingers tracing the edges of the wrapping paper. "Before you open this," she said, her voice quieter than before, "I need you to understand something. This isn't just a gift in the traditional sense. It's something I've been working on for almost 2 years. And I think it might surprise you, maybe even shake you a little." My heart began beating faster. There was a vulnerability in her expression I wasn't accustomed to seeing. She'd always been my practical, steady child. "Okay," I said softly, taking the package from her hands. She sat across from me, her eyes steady but filled with something tender. "Mom, everything in here is connected to a part of you that I think you forgot belonged to you. And I hope it helps you remember." The candles flickered in the quiet room. My hands trembled slightly as I began unwrapping the paper. Part of me wanted to tear it open quickly to end the suspense. But another part was afraid of what memories might be waiting inside and what they might mean. I peeled away the outer layer and found a beautiful wooden box, deep cherry in color, with brass hinges. Resting on top was a sealed envelope with my name written in Anna's handwriting. Inside the box, nestled in midnight blue velvet, were 3 items: a small USB drive, a collection of old photographs bound together with twine, and a silver key attached to a ribbon. The envelope contained a short letter in her careful script. "Mom, if you're willing, start with the drive. Then look through the photos. The key comes last. I'm right here. We'll do this together. That last phrase settled something in my chest. Together. She wasn't dropping revelations and walking away. She was staying, present, and steady. We moved to the living room. She'd already set up her laptop on the coffee table. She inserted the drive, and after a moment of loading, something appeared on the screen that made my breath catch. It was footage, old, slightly grainy footage from what looked like the early 1990s, and there I was, younger by decades, standing in what I recognized as the community theater where I used to volunteer. I was on stage but not performing. I was painting. The camera followed my hands as I created a backdrop, a forest scene with incredible detail. I watched myself mixing colors, my brush moving with confidence I'd forgotten I possessed. I'd loved painting sets for the theater. For nearly 15 years, it had been my passion, my creative outlet, my contribution to something beautiful. Then my husband got sick. Then there were medical bills. Then there was grief. And somewhere in all of that, I simply stopped. I put away the brushes and never took them out again. How did you get this? I whispered. Mr. Pemberton, Anna said softly. The old theater director. He's retired now, but he kept everything. Every production, every behind-the-scenes moment. When I contacted him last year, he spent 3 weekends digitizing old footage for me. He said you were the most talented scenic artist he'd ever worked with. She pressed another key and the video changed. Now it was a compilation. People speaking directly to the camera, all of them people from my past. There was Mrs. Chen, who used to run the art supply store, talking about how I'd spend hours discussing color theory with her. There was James, the young actor I'd mentored, now middle-aged himself, thanking me for believing in him when he didn't believe in himself. There was Margaret from my book club, sharing a story about the watercolor I'd painted for her daughter's wedding. And then there was Anna herself, recorded sometime in the past few weeks, sitting in what looked like her own living room. Hi, Mom, her recorded self said. If you're watching this, I found the courage to give you this gift. When Dad got sick, you put every part of yourself aside to take care of him and me. You never complained. You never asked for recognition. But I watched you, and I saw what it cost you. You stopped painting. You stopped going to the theater. You stopped talking about color and light and the way shadows work. This is me saying I saw that sacrifice. And I'm asking you to pick up those parts of yourself again. Not because you have to, but because you deserve to. The video ended, and the living room fell silent except for the quiet hum of the laptop. I realized my face was wet with tears I hadn't noticed falling. I stopped painting when your father needed me, I said, the words coming out thick with emotion. And after he was gone, I didn't know how to start again. It felt like that part of me belonged to a different lifetime. I know, Anna said. That's why there's more. She handed me the photographs. As I untied the twine, dozens of pictures spilled across my lap. They were photos I'd never seen. Pictures of my paintings, my set designs, production stills from shows where my work was visible in the background. She'd collected them from theater archives, from other volunteers, from old newspaper articles about community productions. In every photo, my work was alive, forests and cityscapes, starry nights and sunny meadows all created with my own hands. Looking at them was like seeing parts of my soul I'd forgotten existed. Anna, I breathed. Where did you find all of these? Everywhere, she said with a small smile. I called in favors. I tracked down people who'd moved away. I spent weekends in library archives. Because, Mom, you need to see what I see, that your art mattered. It still matters. I held the photographs against my chest, feeling the weight of years of forgotten beauty. What's the key for? I finally asked. Anna's expression shifted, nervous excitement mixed with something deeper. This part is bigger, but first, I need to tell you something. We sat there surrounded by images of my past work, and she began talking about the last several years in a way she never had before. She told me about the weight of watching me shrink into a smaller version of myself, about finding one of my old sketchbooks in the attic and crying because the drawings were so full of life, about deciding that if she couldn't give me back the time I'd lost, she could at least give me back the means to create again. I also did something practical, she said, pulling out a folded document. Because I know you, and I know you'll say this is too much. It was a bank statement showing a deposit, enough to cover my expenses for the next 6 months. I'm not trying to fix everything, she added quickly. I just wanted to remove the weight of worry so you could focus on what makes you feel alive. There are moments when you feel your entire world shifting, not catastrophically, but like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. This was one of those moments. Relief washed over me, followed by gratitude so profound it felt like a physical embrace. I stood, my legs shaky, the silver key warm in my palm. "Where does this go?" I asked. "The spare bedroom," Anna said. "But slowly, okay? I want you to let this sink in." We walked down the hallway together, past family photos on the walls, past the doorways of rooms I knew so well they'd become invisible. She stopped at the spare bedroom, the room I'd been using for storage for years. "I've been working on this for months," she said. "Every weekend when you thought I was busy with work." She unlocked the door and we stepped inside. The room had been transformed. The clutter was gone. The walls had been repainted in a soft cream color. Natural light poured through windows I hadn't realized were so large. And in the center of the room stood an easel, a professional grade one, surrounded by a complete painting setup. There were canvases of various sizes stacked against the wall. A tabouret filled with brushes, palette knives, and tubes of paint organized by color family. A comfortable chair by the window for sketching. Proper lighting. Everything an artist could need. But it was what hung on the wall that made me fully break down. It was my very first painting, the one I'd created in college and given to my mother, who'd loved it until the day she died. Anna had somehow tracked it down, had it professionally restored and framed. How? I couldn't even form the question. Aunt Louise had it, Anna explained. She'd kept it all these years. I asked if I could borrow it to have it restored as a surprise. I stood in the center of this beautiful space, this room that had been transformed from forgotten storage into a sanctuary for creation. The afternoon light hit the easel at a perfect angle, and I could already envision what I might paint there. "Anna," I said, turning to face her, "this is too much." "No," she said firmly. "It's not enough. It will never be enough to repay what you gave up. But it's a start." We stood together in that transformed room, and she told me about her vision, about hoping I'd paint again, maybe take a class at the community college, maybe even volunteer at the theater again if I wanted to. "This isn't about going back," she said softly. "It's about going forward with all of yourself intact." That night, after Anna left, I stayed in that room for hours. I opened tubes of paint just to smell them. That distinctive scent of pigment and oil that I'd forgotten could make me feel so alive. I picked up a brush and felt its weight, its balance, the way it fit in my hand like it had been waiting all these years. I didn't paint anything that first night. I just sat by the window as twilight deepened into darkness, holding a sketchbook Anna had included, running my fingers over its clean pages full of possibility. And I thought about all the years I'd spent believing that sacrifice meant erasure. That caring for others meant deleting yourself. That once you set something down, you couldn't pick it up again. But sitting in that room, surrounded by tools for creation and light and hope, I understood something I'd forgotten. We are not defined by what we give up. We are defined by what we choose to reclaim. The next morning, I woke early, not from obligation, but from excitement. I made coffee and carried it to my new studio, and I began to sketch. My hand was rusty, the lines uncertain at first. But gradually, the muscle memory returned, and with it, something else. Joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy. Over the following weeks, I painted. I started small, still lifes of objects around my house, studies of light and shadow. Then I grew bolder. I painted the view from my window. I painted memories of my husband, transforming grief into color. I painted Anna as a child, and then as the woman she'd become. I called Mr. Pemberton at the theater and asked if they needed help with scenic design. He nearly cried when he heard my voice. Within a month, I was back in the theater during tech weeks, paintbrush in hand, creating worlds on wooden flats. I enrolled in a watercolor class at the community center and met other artists. Some young, some my age or older, all of us finding or rediscovering our voices. But more than the painting itself, I rediscovered something fundamental. The person I'd been before loss and responsibility had convinced me to shrink. And I realized that person had never truly disappeared. She'd just been waiting, patient and quiet, for permission to emerge again. On Anna's birthday, 6 months after she'd given me that transformative gift, I gave her something in return. It was a painting, a portrait of the two of us, side by side, but rendered in a style that showed not just our faces, but the essence of our relationship. It showed her steady presence, her thoughtful care, her ability to see what I couldn't see in myself. When she unwrapped it, she cried. "Mom, this is beautiful. You gave me back myself," I told her. "This is me giving you a piece of what that means." She hung it in her living room where she could see it every day. And I continued painting, creating, contributing my art to the world again. Sometimes people ask me about that birthday, about the gift Anna gave me. They expect me to talk about the money, or the studio setup, or the equipment. And those things mattered, certainly. But the real gift was simpler and more profound than any object. The real gift was being seen. Being remembered. Being told that the parts of myself I'd set aside out of love and duty didn't have to stay buried forever. We spend so much of our lives accommodating, adjusting, putting our own dreams on hold for valid and beautiful reasons. We care for sick loved ones. We raise children. We manage crises. And somewhere in all of that necessary sacrifice, we forget that we matter too. That our passions aren't frivolous. That our creative spirits aren't luxuries to be indulged only when every other obligation is met. Anna reminded me that I could be both. I could have been a devoted wife and mother and an artist. The two weren't mutually exclusive. I just convinced myself they were. Now, at 70, I'm creating some of the best work of my life. Not because my technical skills have improved dramatically, but because I'm painting with a depth of experience and emotion I didn't have at 30 or 40. I'm painting with the wisdom of loss, the joy of rediscovery, the gratitude of second chances. My studio is my sanctuary. But more than that, it's proof that it's never too late. That the doors we close behind us aren't always locked forever. That sometimes, someone who loves us hands us the key and reminds us that we're allowed to walk back through. If you're listening to this and thinking about something you set aside, a passion, a dream, a part of yourself that felt too impractical or too selfish to maintain, I want you to know something. It's not too late. It's never too late. The gift Anna gave me wasn't just about painting. It was about permission. Permission to want something for myself. Permission to take up space. Permission to believe that my joy matters, and that's a gift we can all give ourselves, even if no one else thinks to give it to us first. So here's what I learned on my 70th birthday, surrounded by images of my forgotten art and the daughter who refused to let those parts of me disappear. We are not just what we give to others. We are also what we give to ourselves. And the most revolutionary act sometimes is simply remembering who you are beneath all the roles you play. Pick up the paintbrush. Write the story. Plant the garden. Learn the instrument. Whatever it is that makes you feel most yourself, do it. Not someday. Not when circumstances are perfect. Now. Because life doesn't always hand us the perfect moment. Sometimes we have to create it ourselves, one brave choice at a time. And if you're lucky, very lucky, someone who loves you will hand you the key and remind you that the door was never truly locked. You were just standing on the wrong side of it, waiting for permission you already had.